Ladies and gents, this is ML's like Team Spirit. Today I've got Riaz back with me. Riaz, how are you doing?
I am good, John. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Welcome back, and thanks for coming. Thank you for the support. Riaz, you've been with me before, and in one of these interviews, you said, well, not the magic words, they're words that I'd never heard of before. You described a concept in marketing called the dark funnel, and I'd never heard of this. So, Riaz, I've researched it, I've looked into it a little bit, but I'd like you to explain it to others, please. So,
Sure.
so we know you've got a B2B background. For those that weren't here before, you work in tech and consultancy. But explain it for us. What is the dark funnel? It sounds like some kind of scary movie.
It's in a way, it's word of mouth. You could, and I see people time and again equate word of mouth with dark funnel, and there's truth in that, but it is slightly different. It is this idea lots of activities are happening outside of your channels. And of course, traditionally that was word of mouth, people talking on the way into work or over the water cooler. You never could track those things and never could see those things happening. The reason there's a different name and the reason it's called the dark funnel is because now a lot of that word of mouth is happening online. Happening digitally, and so whilst they're not on your channel, so that could be watching a YouTube video, that could be commenting on somebody's LinkedIn post randomly, it could be a chat on Instant Messenger. All these different things are happening and leaving fingerprints, if you like, across the internet that you can't see because it's not in one of your channels.
So how are your customers or clients thinking of these things, Riaz? Because when you listed them there's these other things that happen. Take the YouTube example. We made a video. Yeah. In old times, I worked somewhere where we had lots of word of mouth, and it was more like a bucket of activity that we couldn't well attribute somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't cost us anything.
No.
So we just knew that it was unattributable, and we chucked it over there and called it word of mouth. How are your clients thinking about this, where it's things like, we're investing in content or video production? How are they approaching it as to whether there's an ROI, or do they even care?
Yeah, so the major reason why they're approaching it and how they're approaching it sort of joined together. So the majority of people, and again, obviously from my B2B background here, the majority of people who are buying enterprise software talking to the vendor much later. So whereas before you would put content on your website, you'd drive people to your landing page and they would happily convert and share their email address. And that would be early on in the sales journey. Today, that happens, if at all, much, much later in the sales journey. And so, yes, creating YouTube videos, creating thought leadership on LinkedIn, having a thought leadership presence within communities where your customers are.
And what would be like, let's list them out so let's have a competition. What are going to be all these sources in the dark funnel? So they're kind of like business activities where you have some exposure, but not so easy to measure. We picked YouTube first because this is where this video will end up. But what are some of these other channels, and what are some of these other things?
Yeah, so there's obviously been a massive rise in communities online, whether that's private communities, which are so a CMO networking group, or it could be Reddit, which is obviously a little bit more public. But you still got the water cooler moments. We're all going back to the office more and more. That's coming back more and more.
We'll go further back, Riaz, because I watched a video where you talked about this in more detail.
Go on.
You believe
what did I say?
You believe that COVID was a big trigger where you recognise this more. So
yes.
What's the story there? So is that we were all at home more? These things started to ping up and come onto your radar.
Yeah, there's two big trends going on, and COVID accelerated it. So you've got Gen Z coming into the workplace. They are much more comfortable with sharing information online, talking online. A lot of their communication is happening digitally, and so that is one trend that is happening. COVID accelerated exactly that same trend in the earlier generations. So you were, whereas before you would quite happily, I mean, I remember coming out of university, so many, many years ago now, 20 years ago, talking to people about their usage of instant messenger clients. And the most common comeback was, why would I want to go home and get on a computer and talk to people via instant messenger when I can just go out and have a drink and see them in the real world, right? And that's the big change. Is obviously mobile came about, instant messenger came onto your mobile phone, so you're no longer having to do something, take a different action of sitting down in front of a computer. It's there in your hand at all times, type thing. So all of these things have all helped to accelerate that digital communication activity that just wasn't there 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, and even 5 years ago. I mean, all of these big shifts have just accelerated this further.
As my wife works with younger people, this video is not about that, but I can tell you that like teenagers are literally like, well, what's an email? When my wife says, no, you're like, what's that? That feels super strange to me.
Yeah. Hopefully come when they turn 18 and come into the workforce, it will be introduced to them and they'll stick with it, but we'll see.
Yeah, right. Well, look, let's so there's all these activities then, hard to measure, an increasing population of people gravitating towards them, and they do seem pretty popular. The community side is something I had noticed in the last couple of years as a mechanism to engage with consumers. Riaz, where does it leave people like me? Don't put me out of a job here. My life has been struggling building the old marketing funnels. Never mind understanding how we figure out what works, doesn't work, or we measure in the dark funnel. So what are the strategies just towards understanding, hey, there's all these kind of emerging types of channels or marketing. What do you do to figure out what's valuable here?
Well, I don't think you're out of a job, John. I think this helps. This is more grey. I mean, that's the first thing, right? As a marketer, you've always had to be comfortable with grey. We're never, I hope, are going to live in a world where we can track each individual and what they're doing at all minutes of the day. I mean, that's there's something that thankfully we legislate to prevent. But that also means that as a marketer, you have to infer, you have to guess, you have to have hypotheses. And this is why you have the dark funnel rather than just calling it word of mouth, is the thing about word of mouth is that it includes all the activities that you just cannot ever get hold of the data, right? So the fact that somebody chatted to somebody in passing, you're not going to ever get that data directly. If you're lucky, you might get it if you ask them how they found out about you on a form type thing. But when it comes to dark funnel data, there is data there, and that's why it's separate. It's harder to get hold of. It's harder to understand. But if you, for example, let's take Reddit. Let's say you have a marketing program that invests time in becoming a thought leader within a specific Reddit channel that contains a lot of people who could be your customers. For us, that would be a marketing channel. It could be the B2B marketing channel. It could be the LinkedIn ads marketing channel. And if we're in there and we're spending time and investing effort into there, it's quite difficult to track that data back to your pipeline. The only real way to do it, and it's what we always recommend to clients to do, is to have that ask on your contact pages, and to make sure you're asking in the sales process, how did you find out about us, right? And yes, you're going to get sometimes random answers, but you're going to get enough answers over time to be able to spot, okay, they came via the Reddit community or they came via LinkedIn, and that gives you some sort of indicator. And again, it goes back to being comfortable with the grey side of things. The other The other part of the puzzle is, whilst we don't want to be able to track individuals, it's perfectly fine to be able to track company behavior. And so this is where intent data comes in, and it's obviously one part of the platform that we offer, is the ability to say, okay, what we're seeing right now is increased browsing activity, either on your website or outside of your website, or with the advertising that you deliver. What we're seeing is these companies are spending time in your area, in the problem you're trying to solve, and perhaps you want to have a conversation with them. And so that gives you more data to then act on.
Yeah, a couple of reflections there then. So I suppose back to word of mouth, just thinking about this, I suppose NPS is really in that space, isn't it? The big idea of NPS was that there'd be a bunch of promoters, and that somehow this manifests over a very long time frame. And so good experience, good brand knowledge with good customer experience should result in a whole bunch of promoters, and therefore they go off and speak to other people, and you get a steady drip of consistent sales there always. So NPS is in that space. I should post a video below this about that one. I had someone come on and torpedo NPS as a useful metric. So there's the other side to its calculation and so on and so forth. And then I suppose you mentioned there about grey, and you said something interesting about the individuals. Lots of folk like me are tasked with sort of trying to put together this, I'll say linear, like connected journey to try and understand it. Yes. But the reality is you've got individual data to some extent, and other points you've got aggregate data. So again, you know what your company did. You might not ever be able to figure out the impressions, but you know it was 10 posts that month, 25 contributions on Reddit. So you at least know what effort you put into your exposure. So you're having to kind of put together individual data sometimes, platform data, aggregate data, and then you've got your data that you see in the sales process. So that sampling, like, why did you come here? It's the triangulation skill more than like, hey, we build these funnels where we connect up all the users. What am I trying to say, Riaz? Being at ease with uncertainty is some of the skill here, isn't it? And trying to figure it out using different data sets.
Ultimately, all marketing, I think, boils down to a couple of metrics inside the marketplace. So share of market voice is one of the metrics that we don't often measure. But if you have the biggest share of market voice, you will be growing as a business. The second metric that sits alongside that is brand affinity, which ties into your NPS score that you're talking about. And if you were focusing on Reddit, you would be able to get a feel for what your brand affinity is like, right? Are people feeling positive towards you? And that positivity acts as an accelerator towards that share of market voice. And so the challenge is, how do you can't directly grow those two metrics. You have to build lots of programs, have a strong strategy, spend enough time in various tactics to actually allow it to deliver. Let's face it, building a community inside Reddit isn't going to be something you can just flick a switch on and get results within 1 week. You can offset that. I mean, the other side of the platform for us is the advertising side. You can accelerate that through advertising, and advertising will build in terms of that share of market voice, but it isn't going to do more than support brand affinity. So it can maintain your level of brand affinity, but really you need to be investing in value, support, being helpful, things that are valuable to your audience that makes them feel positive towards your brand.
And Riaz, well, time will tell, Riaz. So look, we've hit time though, but thanks for taking us through the dark funnel. Thank you for your insights. Ladies and gents, this has been ML's Like Teen Spirit.